Recording started.
Perfect. And I see Elena is joining as well right now.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, how
Hi,
are
Elena.
you?
Nice to meet you
Nice to
all.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry
Hello.
for the delay.
No worries, it's perfect like this. Now you have a couple minutes to introduce yourself. Everybody did so far. So if you want to just introduce yourself to the other speakers well before we start, go ahead.
Okay, so nice to be here, and I have all the roles you can imagine in the tech ecosystem: entrepreneur, business angel, investor of the investors, and really advocate for having more women on all this space. So happy to be on the discussion.
Perfect.
Great to
Elena.
have you. Welcome.
Hi. Um,
Elena, you're based in Germany, I hear.
Me in
no,
Barcelona.
Oh, Barcelona. Okay.
it's
I
Yeah.
missed
Marina from Germany. She'll join soon.
my bad. Barcelona
Where
is,
are you
is
all based, or you
in
already
Germany.
mentioned and I'm late?
I'm in Rotterdam.
Okay.
Myself and Demos, we're in the UK, south of England.
Okay. Natalia
I'm in Geneva, Switzerland right now.
and Demos.
South of England as well in the UK.
Oh, okay. All over Europe. That's great.
All
So nice
over,
to be
love
here.
Yeah, and I see Marina, you managed with the camera. I'm so glad.
Yes,
Resolved.
apparently was this configuration, yeah. So yeah, hi, I'm from Germany in Magdeburg.
Hi,
Right.
Marina.
Marina is a neuroscientist, right?
Yes, I'm a neuroscientist here to say a bit of brain issues today.
Cool. Are you, Marina? Are you like an academic or a clinician? I don't know what term is there.
Academic, yeah. I'm biologist, with master in neuroscience, neurobiology, and yeah, I got a PhD in neuroscience, but now I'm more in research management, actually.
Got it. Okay.
Perfect. Now, soon the participants should be coming in. I see there's Stefan already, who we know from a previous event, was a previous speaker. It's nice to see you here, Stefan. I don't know if you're already actually here or if you just joined and
I'm gonna make a quick water run.
okay. Perfect. Let me then share the screen as I said I would have done. Okay.
Someone eating a bag of chips in the background.
That's what it sounds like, right? Corn or something, like.
Oh gosh. Hi Natalia.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm dealing with a head cold today. I sneezed all night.
Oh,
It was not pleasant.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it was near 0 Celsius last week. We had below freezing, which is highly unusual for this late in the spring. So I
where are you
think
calling from, Stefan?
Boston, I live about 16 miles south of Boston, Massachusetts,
Got it.
near the ocean. And when it's cold and the wind blows off the ocean, it's not great.
Okay, I see a few participants are coming in. Welcome for everybody who's joining. We're gonna give it a few minutes to have everybody come in and then we're going to get started. But it's nice to see some faces I know already. It's nice to see some of our Entnest members come in and some new ones as well. Okay, welcome everybody who's coming in. I'm currently only able to see the slides since I'm sharing my screen, so I don't see you, but I'm happy to hear that you're slowly all coming in. And in a couple of minutes, we'll be able to get started when most of the participants have joined. Okay, apologies for that audio issue. In the meantime, we're going to give a more detailed explanation on what Entnest is later on in the event. But Natalia, if you don't mind sending the link to join Entnest in the chat, since we anyway have a couple of minutes to wait for everybody to slowly come in. If you wanted to create an Entnest account to get the best out of the experience, because on the actual event on Entnest, you're able to connect to one another, leave some comments, and stay in touch more easily. Please feel free to do that, because we're still gonna wait 1 or 2 minutes, and that's exactly the amount of time it takes to set up an account. So feel free to go ahead with that.
Sure, I've just included the link on the chat for anyone who wants to check that out.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalia. Okay, everyone, since we're 5 minutes past the hour and I see quite a good amount of people have joined already, I'm just going to start by welcoming you all to this exciting event all about men for gender equality. I'm so happy to be here with you and with the speakers and with the Entnest team to talk about such an important topic. So to start, I just want to give an overview of today's agenda, what will we actually tackle. So to start, I'll give you a brief overview on gender equality and entrepreneurship. So what is the state of the art right now? What's going on in the world right now, especially after COVID? And then Marina Zampetti will give us an overview on whether are there any differences between men and women? Are we the same? And where do these differences come from, if there are any? Following, we'll have Nergis and Dimos talk about their experience in co-founding their venture and what role did gender play, if any, and just some tips from their experience, as co-founders. And finally, we're going to talk about the role of investing in equality with Elena Torres and Sven Meyer. So, as said, we're going to give a brief overview on what Entnest is, because this is an event hosted by Entnest. I'm a member of the Entnest team, and I'm joined by Natalia, who will briefly present what it is so that you can understand what Entnest is about, what you can get out of Entnest, and why we host events such as this one. So,
So hello everyone. It's really exciting to see all of you today. I'm Natalia, one of the Entnest representatives. So I'm just going to be briefly introducing Entnest to all of you who are not exactly familiar with the platform. So Entnest is the all-in-one platform for the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Our mission is to improve the success and impact rate of entrepreneurs everywhere. And we built this through core values like trust and collaboration. We offer an invite-only community, and we provide access to video calling, event planning, organizational tools, and networking all in one place. We have members from more than 50 countries already who benefit from both the combination of a curated global network and improved focus. So to those who have joined today's event as guests, we recommend that you take a few minutes to rejoin the event after making an account with the link that I posted on the chat, because that way after the event you can continue on talking to all the attendees and remain on the event page for follow-up networking or whatever it is. So there's definitely added value to making an account for this event. So I encourage that. That's basically all.
perfect. Thank you so much, Natalia. Natalia will send again a link in the chat like she did before, for those who were not there when we mentioned it earlier. And that is basically a summary of Entnest. So now moving on to why we're here today and who we're here today with. I want to briefly introduce all the speakers, and I'm going to start with Marina, who is a neuroscientist and a research associate at Fraunhofer Institute. Maybe Marina, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks for the invitation today at this event. As I said briefly before, I'm a biologist by training. I studied in Greece, where I come from. I studied biology and molecular biology. Then I moved to Germany for my master studies and later for my PhD in neuroscience. And my particular research topic was neurophysiology of learning and memory, where I studied how the brain is adapting and changing during learning and especially under uncertainty. But since 1 year now, I left the wet lab and I went more to the direction of research management in the Fraunhofer Institute for Factory Operation and Automation in Magdeburg in Germany. And I work in the Department of Strategic Research Management. There is no a lot of about entrepreneurship there, although we are closely collaborating with some startups. But in my role, I focus basically in scientific proposals in the frame of the European projects, like have many European projects in Horizon Europe, in the European Bauhaus initiative. But I also have some operational roles in the institute, like Ombudsperson for good scientific practice, and also I'm very much involved in the topics like diversity and gender equality, not only for our institute, but for the whole Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, the association. So yeah, I'm very happy to discuss with you this very very important topic, and yeah, I'm also interested to see how is the world of gender equality in entrepreneurship, because right now I know more about the research and science. Yeah, thank you very much.
That's perfect. Thank you, Marina. We're really excited to have you, and I'm sure you'll be a great source of insight on the topic and specifically on the scientific background of who we are as people. So, moving on to Nergis Tafarali and Dimos Demetrio, who are the co-founders of Blazon and the co-host of Let's Talk Startups podcast. Maybe would you guys like to say something about yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. I'm Demos, and this is Nergis. We're the co-founders of Blazon, and we are super passionate about startups. Reason being, we know that they're very, very hard to build because of our own experience, and it's the reason that we support startups with a number of services and the podcast that we launched recently as well. Access to our huge network as well. Ultimately, just to really help startups with the sole purpose of helping them grow because it is so tough out there.
Perfect. Thank you. Nergis, do you want to say a word as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're super excited to be here. It's an honor to be sort of included in this discussion, definitely. And I think it's a very important issue that we're going to drill down into a bit more. We're going to be sharing our own sort of personal insights. So we'll obviously touch on that a little bit later. But no, very excited to meet you all and obviously discuss this issue together.
Perfect. Thank you both. We're really excited to have you on board as well. Moving on, we have Helena Torres, who is the managing partner at Power Capital and a supporting partner at Calmstorm VC. Helena, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, very fast. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that we discuss about it because this is about all of us, men and women. We cannot fight alone. And just briefly, half of my professional life in the corporate side, and the other half, the funniest one, it's in the tech ecosystem with different hats. I've been entrepreneur, having raised more than 30 million. I've been business angel myself, having invested in more than 15 startups. And I'm supporting partner at Calmstorm VC that we invest in digital health and well-being startups. Also independent board director on a fund of funds. So 360 view on this ecosystem, apart from advisor or some advisory, some members of the board. So happy to discuss that and looking for the conversation. And I co-founded a group of women angels to invest in women startups that we are called We Rock Capital.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Elena. I'm looking forward to get more insights from you later on as well. And then we have our last speaker, Sven Mayer, who's the impact investor at For Impact VC. Sven, can you tell us about yourself?
Yes. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. US, and good evening if you're in Asia. Thanks for joining us, and I'm very happy to be here. My name's Sven. I work with For Impact. We're an impact-focused VC fund based in the beautiful Netherlands, where I'm calling in from right now. My background is in the business and science space, and worked in the startup ecosystem in Amsterdam for a couple of years, and I got into the German VC space for a while. And over time, this desire to work in a more targeted environment where impact is really at the core of what we do has grown with myself, which ultimately led to joining For Impact. And what we do at For Impact is we invest in impactful software companies in three different pillars, being environment, inclusion, and health and well-being. And we've made 3 investments in the inclusion space so far, actually 4. One of the most recent ones was an inclusion investment, and I'll talk more about those later. But yeah, that's the skinny on For Impact and myself.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to hearing more in a bit as well. So these are our 5 speakers today. I am beyond excited to be joined by them. And I just want to let you know, as said, we'll run through different topics and different speakers will be speaking. Please feel free to send questions in the chat at any point, but we'll always have a bit of time after the speakers have spoken about their expertise to ask those questions. So know that we'll answer your questions, but that there are specific timeframes reserved for that. So moving on to a brief overview of the topic. Why are we here? What are we discussing? As you all know, since you joined, we're talking about gender equality, more specifically in entrepreneurship. And why is it important to ensure gender equality? It's important because, as Natavud Pimpa, a PhD researcher in the topic, expressed really well, besides boosting employment, women entrepreneurship also support the diversification of business, stimulating innovation and diversification in management, production, and marketing practices, as well as in products and services. So, making sure that both male and female counterparts are involved in entrepreneurship not only is a human issue, it's an issue that benefits productivity, practices, services, and innovation as a whole. But although we know this, what is the situation right now? Why are we having to have this discussion? As a brief overview, because obviously this is a very deep topic and we could talk for hours, but in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor report from 2020/2021 confirms that we still see a gap between female and male entrepreneurs, but they suggest that a gap is closing, luckily. The problem is the pandemic came. And so, as we know, this had positive and negative effects on everybody's lives and on the economy. And so it did also on entrepreneurship. So what we see is that there was a stronger decrease in the businesses founded by females in 2020 due to the pandemic. And that was due to the fact that women are often expected to take over jobs such as taking care of their homework and homeschooling the kids. And as kids were sent back home, they had to take more care of their children and in general of their loved ones at home, and so had less time to devote to their businesses. On the other hand, we see that in other regions of the world, because obviously this is dependent not just on gender, but on socioeconomic status and a lot of different variables, we see that the amount of female-founded startups increased. And that was, according to a study, due 40% to the pandemic. So 40% of female founders said, I started a business in 2020 because as a result of the pandemic. What does this mean in numbers? Again, very briefly, it means that in the UK, for example, we have one out of three entrepreneurs is a woman. So we still, again, have this big gap. And these women who are entrepreneurs report that they're being charged more for long-term loans than men. They report that they're having more trouble to get access to funding. In fact, 1 in 3 women says they have problems accessing funding. Only 1 in 5 men does. And what we see is also that women report experiencing gender bias, and we see a double bind. So, for example, when a woman is trying to enter an industry that is led by men, an example would be the fintech industry, they're being labeled as unfit and struggle to get funding from their investors. While when a man enters a female-led industry, such as maybe the fashion tech industry, they don't experience this prejudice. They do quite as well as women do. So that is why we call it a double bind. And finally, what we see is that when we're looking then at valuations of the ventures, female-led ventures are priced significantly lower than men-led one. And over the long term, female founding CEOs tend to retain significantly less equity than do men. So what do I want to say with this number and this overview? I want to just show you that there's still an issue. And I want to bring to your attention that this is an issue that affects women mainly, but it's an issue that cannot be fixed just by women, because on the other side of the equation there's men. So that's why we're having that conversation. We're getting men involved, and we want men in the audience, we want men in the speakers, and we want to work together towards solving this issue. And so the question obviously that comes next is, okay, but why does this happen? Like, why do we have this gap? And what can we do to solve the issue? And that is why we're here today. And to start the conversation, I want to tackle the first part. Why does this happen? Are there any difference? And that is why we're gonna pass the word on to Marina, who will tackle the issue of gender differences from a neuroscientist point of view. So, Marina, you have the floor now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, let's start from, let's say, biological perspectives. So welcome to my short impulse presentation, where I want to discuss with you if there are actually pink and blue entrepreneurs' brains, or in general, pink and blue brains. So next slide, please. Yes. When Charlotte invited me and talked to me about this event, I was a little bit afraid that actually I don't know so many about entrepreneurship, but actually I started doing some research and looking online some scientific publications, what exists, and I also observed that there is a big debate or like some doubts if an entrepreneur is born or made. And what I found on the most of the studies, and perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, they say that actually the most successful entrepreneurs are actually made. Means that actually there are things that we can do to become entrepreneurs, or to things to learn, or things to be to be taught. So one dimension, what I found, and perhaps already you know, is the personality traits. There are a lot of things that you can find out in the publications, but what I found that I highlighted here is that the three crucial: the ability to take or manage risks, the resilience, like overcoming failures and start up again, and also the adaptability, which means like facing new challenges all the time. Next click, please. So the second dimension will be the skill sets, which means actually the educational background, basic financial skills, speaking to the public, accepting or giving feedback, and in general, I would say whatever serves the pain points that your business, your startup targets, like to the target group. So, and the third dimension, next click, will be the conditions. The conditions we can consider as particular environments, particular societal and cultural norms or barriers, the educational system, the opportunities, the given network one has, or the role model one has. All these are the conditions that can help someone become entrepreneur or not. And the fourth dimension, and this is the debate now, is actually the gender, one of the variables that can be specific for someone to become entrepreneur or not, in meaning of gender differences in personality, psychological aspects, skills, mindset, hormones even, or what I want also to focus today is there are brain structural differences that make a better male or a better female entrepreneur. Next slide, please. Yes. So yeah, as I am scientist, as I said, I directly looked into the literature and I found some scientific evidence. And from one side, I found quite many studies, like plethora of studies actually, on the psychological and sociology field, where they could provide statistics, interviews, and so on, and they discover male versus female traits. And you are probably familiar with some traits that are specific for male and female. And there are also very elaborated studies that are focusing in female qualities in leadership. There are a lot of studies, but also in entrepreneurship. And what I found quite interesting is that they fight against this argument, which is called think leader, think male. And in my conclusion, after having this little research, I would say yes, there are female qualities, like, for example, women are nurturing, are collaborative, they excel in empathy, they can build easily communities, they have a great diplomacy, they have passion for diversity, and so on and so forth. So, next click. So this is the one side of psychology and sociology dimension. But as I said, I'm a neurobiologist, and I want to see with you if there are differences indeed in the brain. So I tried to find some evidence here, and I'm actually quite familiar with this neurogender community. It's actually a specific field in neuroscience called neurosexism, gender biology, gender neuroscience. There are a lot of terms. And there is more and more evidence that actually the gender brain is a myth. And as I said, there are a lot of publications, but here I refer to you to two pioneers, which is Professor Gina Ripon and Professor Cordelia Fina, who are pioneers in the field of neurogendering. Professor Gina Ripon is also the author of the book The Gender Brain, which I highly recommend it. And she says that it's actually inaccurate, distraction, and possibly harmful to think about the brain in terms of male and female. Because actually, you can think of our brain is an organ, as it is like the liver or any other organ in our body. And we cannot talk about a male and female liver. The same way we cannot talk about a male and female brain. So this organ is as any other organs, right? But what we can talk is about brain plasticity. In neuroscience, we talk often, and this is a dogma in neuroscience, that the brain are plastic, meaning that neuronal activity is changing, neuronal connections are always changing, and this is highly dependent to our life experiences. Let's say an example, if you are a little girl and you are given all the time Legos to play, then perhaps you will your spatial skills or your 3D dimensional skills and perception will be much stronger than a girl that has never given Legos to play, and so on. Also, Professor Ripon says clearly that the neural circuits are adapting to specific circumstances and changing via learning. And this is actually what I also found in my research in my during my PhD. And some evidence about neurosexism. It's actually right. Are we asking the right question? This is what Professor Cordelia Fina says. And usually, on many studies in neuroscience, they do not ask the right question. But also, we have big problem of neurosexism, meaning that there is a misinterpretation of sex-based biology studies or brain imaging data. There is the last decades, there are a lot of brain imaging data, like fMRI data, showing strong brain picture with differences like male versus female. women are worse in spatial navigation, for example. This is a very usual topic. But what is the problem, and what Professor Fina did and dedicated her research is to collect a lot of data, a lot of analysis on this in this pre-data, and she found that actually there are a lot of wrong analysis tools or wrong methodologies that people they use. There are wrong sampling of data, and then the scientists come up with the wrong conclusions, of course, and they come to the conclusions, oh yes, there is a big difference between male and female brain in the structure of the brain or in the functionality of the brain. So, and another big problem which leads to this neurosexism is actually that scientists, our currency is the scientific publications. So, and it is much easier to publish an article if you report a difference between genders rather than a no difference, right? Because it's more fancy, because it's more loud, and so on. Therefore, this is a big problem in neuroscience. Therefore, I will really like to point out this need that actually from our side as neuroscientists we need to be very careful on how we design the studies and how to design the experiments, and also how we read the results. And also for the audience, the public that they read, they have to be cautious about the source of the articles that they read, and if it is something that they can trust or not. So next slide, please. So now the question is, so you will ask, well, if it is not the brain, what generates the behavior if not the brain? And then I will go a little bit back to the basic biology or even to evolution, which we have the triplet genotype, environment, and phenotype. So the genotype is actually our DNA, our basic structure, our structure of life, right? So the environment is whatever is the surrounding, and environment, as we know, in terms of evolution, plays fundamental role. And the interaction between genotype and the environment gives the phenotype, gives actually what the organisms or what we as human we are actually we are, and how we look like or how we act. Therefore, I believe that we must rethink our scientific questions, and we will try, as not only as scientists but in general, to find answers not in the gender brain but in the gender world. Because this gender world that we created, the environment we created, shapes the policies, social hierarchies, the relationships, the well being, the mental health, the policies and laws, and the cultural expectations, which is very, very important. And next click. So and I will close this short impulse presentation with this quote, which I found in a TEDx talk from a CEO from Tel Aviv, who spoke about how could female entrepreneurs influence gender equality. And she said the answer is simply you can for women entrepreneurs. So we want our daughters to grow up in a world with truly equal opportunities in terms of the environment. They do not only lean into the table, but they can build their own table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina. This was such an interesting presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and come back so I can see you and you can see me also, because I was probably hidden for a bit. It was really interesting to learn about all these questions, to learn about all the bias that can be in research, because as you said, nobody wants to read a paper saying there's no difference. And also, it's always hard to know. We might research keeps changing, as does biology, as does neuroscience. What we think to be true one day may not be through the next. I wanted to see if maybe there were any questions that you would like to ask to Marina.
Yes, of course.
I'm going to go through the chat, but if anybody has anything specific, you can either raise your hand or simply unmute yourself and ask away, because I see there's a lot written in the chat.
I see a hand. Kate?
Yes, go ahead, Kate. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi, Dr. Maria. Have you done a research on individuals' mindset? I believe anybody beyond gender, what we think about ourselves heavily influences our reality. Have you had a study about that?
Do you mean like each person to have like a different personality trait or what?
Oh, mindset, like law of attraction, how I view myself, I co-create with the universe, like that.
Oh no, to be honest, I haven't went to this direction at all. I focused more on the like structural part, but this will be an interesting dimension that we can look it up. Yeah, that's really interesting. Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Kate. I think I saw Christian. Yeah, you're raising your hand. Please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I think you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes, now I posted a question in the chat too, but I was wondering, have you found any research why women make decisions differently compared to men? Because it was really interesting that you say the brain structure is the same, neuroplasticity is the same. Well, like what we have recently now over the last 8 weeks, that the women from Ukraine, we try to predict how they are moving to other startup ecosystems as founders or as entrepreneurs. And it was really interesting how when they are safe, they really don't want to move. Where we see that the male founders are more likely to move even with more unknowns. Have you found anything behind that?
Well, I think this goes to the direction of decision making, which was actually my research topic. But we never we can never say that actually the decision making process in the brain it's dependent on sex. So this is actually, as I said before, inaccurate. We cannot prove it, and well, from studies, there is like when we use animal studies, there is always a tendency to use male animals, and there is a lot of decision making research based on animal studies on male animals, and this is actually something problematic, and we need to have more research to balance it to have also female. But from what there is currently decision making literature, we cannot conclude that actually decision making in woman is yeah is more difficult than male brain. Yeah, so because the process itself, as I said, the brain organ is the same, either it's a man or a woman, and the process will be dependent on the experiences, on the environment that we will live. So I doubt that it will be some different processing going on a decision making level between the two males, the two genders. Yeah.
Because if I may add something to this, what was interesting, I found this one research of investment. And what's interesting is that male founders, if you have a team of two men, that they grow faster, but they burn their money faster. And what you see with the women, that they raise less capital and they don't lose it, but they also give less return on investment. And then the sweet spot was a mixed team. And a big problem, what we've been trying to, so anyone in this group that might have some good information about this, what we were trying to find out was how can we involve more women in male teams Because
this
what
is
was also interesting is that especially in the early stage startups, we see that the women prefer to join the program or the startups in the second phase when the first clients are in and the first investment is in, and that pre-seed stage is kind of getting a void. So I was wondering from that part, like, why would that be from your neuroscience perspective?
Yeah, I think this comes with the first part of the column I saw, like not in the structural part of the neuroscientific part I saw, but more in the female qualities. And these female qualities have a deeper source, let's say, because of our society, of our community is built so, our world is built so. And there are these cultural expectations that women are grown up differently than men. So indeed, there are women that, for example, they like to take decisions a bit more stable decisions, or to they like first to analyze a lot and then take the decisions. But this, for me, and from what I read and I found in the literature, has more to do with how we are grown as women and our society rather than the pure brain work, let's say. So this is the message that I want to pass here, that we don't need to focus on the brain structure, but rather the world that we are built on. For example, if we have role models that they are very decisive and taking risks and so on, then perhaps we will be uh, more encouraged to join a startup with more risks. And so, yeah.
Right. Does that
Thank you.
answer your question, Christian?
Well, I think it's an interesting discussion based on so
Yeah.
many angles and also so many
Yeah.
resources what you come from. Well, what I think is interesting, what we found was on our side is that we see more like instead of talking about genders, we talk about masculine behavior and feminine behavior, and finding balance there, and especially from the Asian perspective, where it's more about the yin yang, and you can't live without both. And that's what we see when we see the thing of leadership, as in the best leaders, they share a vision, which is a masculine language, where we see that they also care about who they are leading to and how they treat their followers, which is like the feminine behavior. So, and the best startups and best leaders, what we found, they do both. So it was really interesting in how we have to teach founders or leaders to develop both sides. But it was, yeah, no, I'm definitely curious of what's behind that, but we can speak for hours about that. So thank you so much.
Thank you
Right.
too.
Thank you so much for the question. I think it brings us back to the whole idea, like why we're here, because we need balance. We need a combination of both men and women, and whether these differences are something we're born with, which Marina is suggesting is not the case, or whether they're learned afterwards. We still need to combine the two in order to have the best combination. So thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next speakers, but if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to write them in the chat. And if we have time at the end, we'll be able to discuss this topic further. As Christian said, we could go for hours. But I want to leave some space right now for Nergis and Dimos to talk about their experience as co-founders. They are the perfect combo of men and women. How is this experience? What have you learned? And maybe share a bit with us from what we can learn from you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Charlotte. And hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you to Charlotte and Entnest for actually having us here today. We've been invited, as Charlotte said, to share with you all our own journey into launching a startup. So, as you said, one male and a female as co-founders, and just basically discussing whether gender has actually impacted that journey in any way.
Excuse me, Charlotte and Entnest as well. Thank you very much, and Dr. Maria as well. It was a very interesting insight in your talk there, and also to Christian as well. Some good questions and some insight, I guess, from what you're doing there. Well, firstly, I have to say I am extremely happy to be talking today because in Blazon, I'm outnumbered 5-1 by females, so it's nice to be let out today to actually talk and maybe share our journey a bit. So I'm going to start actually from the beginning, a brief bit about our origin story, about how Nergis and I met and actually came across the opportunity with Blazon. So we met 6 years ago. At the time, I was building a business in the recruitment space, a very niche market. And Nergis was hired at the time to take care of all the business development and the marketing. About a couple of years into the journey, the business pivoted to create an app to really disrupt the industry. And as part of that disruption, we were looking at fundraising. And as part of the fundraising, we had to demonstrate a good marketing plan. And at that time, we were doing our research. Nergis was actually doing a lot of that research, talking to agencies to find out how they could best help us. And at the time, they were massively costly, and agencies didn't really have a good understanding, in truth, about how startups really work. So there just wasn't a good fit at all. So Nergis had a brainwave, actually, to take all our marketing in-house and just control it all ourselves, which for us as a startup was fantastic because we could control what we did. And as if there's many of you here that have startup experience, things are changing obviously every day, so that was massively important. And as we started on that journey with our own marketing, we got quite a lot of attention, which was fantastic. Also from other founders who were building startups who asked us if we could actually help them with their marketing. So at that point, we then sort of looked at each other and thought, well, could there be an opportunity here, really?
Absolutely, as all ideas come about, right, from personal experience. And at that stage, Demos, you sort of came to me with, I guess, that sort of invitation, right, to join formally as co-founder and then set up this new company, which would obviously become Blazon together. So my question to you, Demos, in that particular decision-making time, do you think that gender affected that decision in any way?
Absolutely not. However, a previous business venture with a female partner at the time wasn't a terrible experience. I can't really talk about it too much, unfortunately, but in truth, I should have really run for the hills with the thought of having a female founder in the business, if I'm honest. But no two people are the same, and it would have been completely unfair to tarnish Nergis with the same brush as my previous experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that particular situation at that time, speculatively, obviously, had there been a male, with exactly the same skills as myself, side by side, what would you have done?
Well, if I knew I was going to be so outnumbered by females at this point, I would have embraced him, I think, from the beginning. Now, on a serious note, I mean, I've worked with men and women as employees and partners over my business career, really. And gender ultimately has never been part of the decision to work with them. It's always been around experience, who can I work better with, their character, their work ethics, are they problem solvers, are they passionate about our business and what we're really trying to do? And another big one as well is like, who has the skills that I don't have? I don't really want to have a clone of myself. It could have worked with a male potentially, but obviously it wouldn't have been as good, Nergis, if as it has been with yourself.
Obviously, thank you for that. So, I mean, thinking of the origins then of the business, how we've grown the startup from this idea to an actual business, do you think that gender has kind of influenced the origins of actually wanting to start up this business in the first place?
Not at all. I mean, as I said, sort of in the origin story about the challenges the startups faced, certainly at the beginning with marketing when we started, Blazon was founded to fix a problem. But I have to say, indirectly, there have been some benefits, which we can hopefully share a little bit more about that between our partnership. But I sort of, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I don't think, it was built to solve a problem. We saw an opportunity, and that's where it headed. And yeah, I agree. I think in my own career, I've worked alongside men and women equally in equal measures, and I can't really say that one has been better than the other because of gender in any shape or form. Certainly there can be advantages in your working life, and obviously different aspects that maybe a male can bring over a female and vice versa. But I think for myself, in terms of like major business decisions and, whether gender has impacted those decisions, I agree with you, Demos. I think I don't really see gender in that way. So for me, it just doesn't affect the way that I work or the job in hand, right? But I'm thinking sort of specifically about the way that we've grown this business in the last 2 years, the ups and downs, the more the day-to-day running of the business. You're massively outnumbered by women on the team. So, I mean, do you think there are any benefits specifically to yourself having a female co-founder and then also having an all-female team?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the benefit of being outnumbered, but listen, I think what's much more important is that we are building a team that work well together. We're building a great team culture. We try and have fun as well while we're doing this. I mean, just recently, last week, one of our team, Amy, came up with a sort of a fun thing for us to do in our team meeting, which was around Dragon's Den. And we all had a very short period of time to pitch to the rest of our team who are going to be their dragons, the worst possible idea that we could come up with, which was great fun. And it's things like that make the journey enjoyable for the team, because it is hard when you're building something from the ground up. And also challenging our team as well to make sure they're enjoying their roles. Now, we're a creative business and everybody comes from various backgrounds and interests. They've had different experiences. So I think that, in a creativity space, business in general, all of these things, they should never be determined by gender at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us also one of the big advantages, if you will, we're a young team, right? So I would say we don't have those possible gender-specific, gender-related challenges that you may get with a slightly older team. Things like maternity, paternity leave, childcare, those things don't affect us. So the team that we've built, they are that perfect fit for the way that our business runs, right? So we're remotely based, we're flexible in the way we work. Obviously, you've touched on our culture as well. And the team can relate to that very nicely. I think that becomes an advantage to us specifically, that we can sort of resist any gender-specific challenges, which just means we just enjoy having creatives in our team, regardless of their gender, right?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, I mean, we recently hired a couple of new team members and they're both female. And it's very strange that the adverts that we seem to put out attract females. But before I share some insight with you, Nergis, and everybody else who's listening, I mean, why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's bizarre. We do seem to attract a lot of women to the company. And you're right, it's certainly not something that we've actively tried to do. Our branding, our tone of voice, the public portrayal of our business, it's certainly not female focused, I would say, but or skewed to a particular gender or anything like that. Certainly we always make a very strong effort to be as diverse as possible, and promote equality on all levels. So that's in everything that we do. So I don't know, there may be something in the actual job that we're recruiting for that sort of appeals to more women over men. I don't know, are there more budding female content writers and graphic designers out there than male, perhaps? I don't know.
Well, so this is interesting. So a little bit of research suggests that in the UK, at least, the creative and design workforce is actually 78% male. But it just seems they don't seem to be coming our way, I guess, with the job adverts that we put out. But interestingly, the same research says that 7 out of 10 students that are taking design at A level are women. And they say that various keywords, certain keywords in your adverts can attract more male or female. So that's really interesting. And I mean, Nergis, just sort of echoing really your thoughts on promoting equality. Hiring for us has never been about gender, definitely, nor disability, race or religion. I think it's, we both think it's massively important to promote equality in absolutely everything that we do. But Nergis, do you think that we've applied that same equality to the clients and the partners that we've onboarded along the way?
Yeah, I do. And I hope that we've done a good enough job. It's obviously something that, I expect us to progress with, because we've never made a conscious effort to target specific gender or founder, right? So we work with all startups, but that's in all sectors across the globe. We're welcoming conversations from male and female founders, right? With our client base, I would say that's pretty much an even split of male and female. So I certainly can't say that Blazon favors one over the other. And I think it's quite nice that we do have a track record and a client portfolio that has founders from different backgrounds, right? Keeps things interesting, but it obviously adds more value to everything that we're doing and how we grow as a business as well. And I think in terms of sales and business development and the conversations, the new business leads that we've pursued along the way, again, there's no bias, right, towards male or female. So we always start that conversation with a focus on the startup. What are they doing? What are their challenges? How we can help them? It's what they need from us, but gender has never, ever played a role in that conversation or that focus, right? And recently we've been taking on new partners, as you mentioned. And for us, that's being done with gender neutral eyes. So it's always about the value. What value are they going to bring to us, to our clients, to our community, regardless of whether they're male or female? Thinking about all the people that we've worked with, we pride ourselves on the fact that it's all about relationship building, right? So it's always a long-term vision for us with our team, with our clients, with our partners. How do you think that gender has impacted those relationships that we've built with our clients, either positively or negatively?
I think actually very positively, but in truth, preparation for this event actually made us realise just how positive those relationships have been. And I do agree with you that relationship building is certainly key for our success, with our clients, our team, partners. And it's very interesting because you and I are both equally involved in sort of strategy calls and all sorts of communications with our clients from the beginning. But I find it funny that some clients naturally gravitate to want to speak to you, others to me, and yet there's no instruction to do so.
Yeah, it is. And I have to say, we've never actually acknowledged this before until we did prep for this event. And then we drilled down to it and thought, actually, yeah, this totally happens. But actually, I'm proud to say it works to our advantage. So, to share a few examples, we've got a client that runs a community that's specifically for female founders in the tech space. So we've worked with her for 2 years, but 99% of her messages start with Dear Nergis. Similarly, we've got another client that runs a garage business. Every single email of his is directed to Demos over myself. I don't think I've spoken to him in months, albeit he's not a real Zoom meeting kind of guy. But I guess the question there is, would that first founder be, if I wasn't there or if you weren't there, would that first founder have spoken to you? Would we have secured her as a client? What are your thoughts, Demos?
Well, it's a very good question. Our introduction calls with the startup sort of founders that we deal with are very similar. And going to the garage owner, I think they possibly may because they're a little bit more of a mainstream business. But equally, some sort of other female-led clients, as you've sort of said, with communities and stuff, I don't think they would work if it was just sort of solely with me. Some clients, for some reason, are just naturally drawn to either of us. And another example, a client who is now sort of pivoting a bit, targeting working mothers. It's a brand new campaign. And Nergis, had you not been part of Blazon, do you think we would have secured that campaign really?
Yeah, that's an interesting, obviously it's speculative, we'll never know, right, in truth. But I think, that there's an argument to say that client sees the value in us as a, professional business and our services over, whether she's dealing with you or whether she's dealing with me. I think, again, for us, we've been able to leverage the fact that we do have one of each. So the fact that we have, 2 different perspectives, we've got just extra value that we're able to add to her campaign and then onwards, right, within our entire business. Obviously that campaign, yes, there will be certain things I can draw on as a working mum directly in terms of new ideas, but you yourself, you're a working dad. So it's not to say that one has, more benefit than the other. I think we've got different things that we can bring to the table, and it's just about using those things and applying them to our business. Maybe it helps us win more business, who knows, but I don't think it's a hindrance, which is the good thing, right? Onto the future, I guess. Do you think that Blazon could work in the same way if we had more males and less females, perhaps? If I wasn't here and you had a male co-founder or vice versa, I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't think the number of men or women would make any difference. Interesting, the sort of earlier on Christian mentioned about 2 male founders would have spent more money probably. So maybe that's a good thing that there isn't 2. I would say though, I don't think it would have worked as well with the sole founder, because building a startup can be very, very lonely, and having somebody else to bounce ideas off and support you through those challenging times, I think is key. And I also think that as sort of co-founders in the business as well, certainly male and female, helps in the creative industry, because we're constantly coming up with new ideas, bouncing ideas off each other, which I think is very, very important. And I mean, ultimately, you mentioned it earlier, we're very proud about what we've achieved together. And it's sort of a side of gender, really. The partnership has never been based on that whatsoever. And we've always been gender neutral business team, and we will always continue to be like that. But one final question for you, do you think that other businesses do enough really for gender equality?
Yeah, I think all can be done, right? And obviously that's why we're having this conversation. Sadly, discrimination does occur. Personally, I've not been held back because of my gender. I'm proud to say that, and I touch wood. But there are going to be people out there who have been restricted or held back. I think conversations like this are imperative, and we should carry on having more conversations, right? Raising awareness and sharing what we're doing in our own field, in our own company, in your own life. And sharing things that you may not even think is a thing, right? Obviously, we're sharing insights about how we've grown and things. There'll be people listening here who think, oh, I didn't even think of doing it that way, or maybe questions that they have and stuff. But having more conversations, hopefully it will level out the playing field in the future. Charlotte, over to you.
Yes.
If there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Thank you. That was such a great interaction and an interesting conversation. I think it was great to hear from many different sides of the business, not just founding, but now you're recruiting and you have many women. How is it possible? There's mostly women applying. You're hiring women in a field that you found has a majority of men. Maybe there's some changes going through generations, or what could be happening. It's a great question, and I think again, looking at the same thing with clients, the fact that Demos, you're a dad, and a client that was looking to build a community for parents goes towards a woman. That's really interesting. That shows something about our society. Why is it taken for granted that Nargis should be the right person to be able to relate if you're the one who has a child? So I think this brought up very, very interesting points. I see that Natalia raised her hand. Would you like to ask something or say something?
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. So I just have a question. It was really refreshing to hear from both of you that you're very gender neutral. I think our generation is moving towards that a bit more. But I have a question because obviously there is still a gap in the business world. And I wanted to ask, as a gender neutral business, where do you think that comes from? Like, why is it still there if there is a movement towards less discrimination and all of that?
Who wants to answer that? I think for us, certainly, it's funny. Maybe it's just the way that our personalities are ourselves, and just, it sounds almost quite ignorant to say it out loud, but genuinely, we just don't see gender. So it's certainly not something that we would actively look. And that's why I even asked Demos the question. Obviously, it's hypothetical, but if you had male and a female side by side, what would you do? And Demos's answer was telling of how we both are. That's why we work well together, but also how we've built the business, of just everything being an even playing field. We're not out to build a female-led business. I even joked to Demos, wouldn't it be great next hire for it to be a guy? And the only reason, just to mix things up a little bit, for no other reason other than that, for us, recruiting, it's just about the person, what value they can bring, their skills and themselves as a person. And for us, we're, as Demos said, we're a creative business. So it's all about the ideas. Same with the clients. It's just about their startup and how we can actually help them. Partnerships, it's about value building. So I don't know, we've just never really seen that in ourselves. And I think that's more about how we live our lives and how we've been raised and our own backgrounds and things like that. So maybe there will be companies that actually do have to make active steps of actually, you know what, maybe we do need to change certain processes to be more gender neutral. I think maybe the fortunate ones are in the same boat and just don't see and are able just to grow a business, and they do it naturally, you know. And I would hope that more people, it just becomes second nature, so that we end up, or at least aspire to to be in a world where there is just a level playing field and things are just fairer. Small steps, right?
I have a provocative question to this to this answer that you gave, because
I'm ready.
perfect. I wonder if you feel this way because you are in a field that somehow is still largely female led, at least from what we see in your company, what we see in Entnest as well. We have a marketing team, it's only women. And I wonder if that's why you, as a woman, are comfortable within the field. And as we were discussing the double bind earlier, usually men are not as discriminated as women. I wonder if your company was the opposite, and it was largely men, would you Nargis feel as comfortable? So I you know what I'm saying? I question whether it's just that not women do it better, absolutely not, but is it just because usually women are the discriminated one and you're in a field of women, so could that be that it is this that allows you to live so gender blind, let's say?
Yeah, great question. And I think the thing is, it's always about your own personal experiences, right? Professional or personal. If, again, hypothetically, you know, if I'd gone through something myself that had shaped me in a different way, then maybe, yes, you're right. There's nothing to say that I would feel differently. What I would say is, you know, it's certainly not, I mean, I've been in all men meetings. You know, I don't know, we've spoken to investors maybe who've been male, or we've been in a Zoom call and there's just been men and I'm the only female. So that's not to say that it's just, you know, it's always been the other way around. It just so happens that our team is, yeah, predominantly female based, and it's just ended up that way. But I do think it's what you bring as yourself to the table. So your own personal experience, your own professional experience, and then the confidence that you can bring with that to kind of try and break down barriers. I'm not saying that everyone is able to do that. And obviously circumstances change from person to person. So it's certainly not something you can tarnish everyone with the same brush of, well, everyone should do X, Y, Z, right? But I think the more women that can kind of break down any boundaries, so that we try to get to that level where you just don't see whether it's a male or a female on a screen, or whether you almost don't see that you are the only woman in a space or the only man in a space. It's almost like we're just talking person to person. The closer we can get to that, I think, then you're making change, right? Then you're getting closer to making change.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That was a good answer to my question, and I fully agree. I hope we can soon have this experience, this sharing experience of everybody truly being the same, and that's all. What gender equality is all about. No, everybody equal, despite whichever characteristic in this case is gender. But there's so many more of our identities. So thank you so much to both of you. It was really interesting. As I don't see any further question, Christian sent us a question, but then he had to leave. So I'm going to just move on. If anybody has any questions, send them in the chat and we'll discuss them later. But now I want to turn the page from the founders and move on to those who actually found the funders, which are our investors. That's why we have Elena and Sven with us. And that's why I want to throw the ball at you. Maybe we can start with Sven, who I know has been cooking up with For Impact some great things to further gender equality. And maybe you can tell me more about the role of investing in gender equality and what you've been up to.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks a lot. And I think what I'd like to do today is just tell a little bit about the tech solutions that we see out there in the market that can actually add to these changes that we're all trying to work towards a more inclusive startup ecosystem, to a more inclusive VC ecosystem, and that include that encapsulates inclusion across different dimensions, right? Whether that's gender or cultural or educational. But let me take things back for a second and just remind you what For Impact is. Again, we're an impact VC fund. We invest in software startups, and we have these three impact verticals that we invest in, those being environment, inclusion, and health and well-being. And in the inclusion space, we're seeing lots of very interesting companies around, and I'm going to share three of them with you in a second. But let me rewind to For Impact and sort of on the higher level. For Impact is actually one of the very few VC funds, I want to say worldwide, maybe, that has a female majority partner level, which is quite rare in the VC space. Obviously, we're moving in the right direction very slowly, but there's still a lot of ground to cover in terms of equality, especially on the partner level in the VC world. Now, we're a small fund, right? There's three partners, two of them are women, but we're hoping that at least this sends a bit of a message to young female graduates that says, you can and you must join the startup ecosystem, the VC ecosystem. And this ties in nicely with what Demos said earlier. You mentioned that sort of 80% of people in the creative industries in the classroom are female, but only 20% of the workforce are female. So evidently there seems to be something turning women off after the educational and the professional stage. And hopefully, building these role model organizations, female-led organizations like For Impact can help a little bit in painting a vision that inspires more people to join the space. Another thing that we spoke a lot about is the yin and yang earlier, and Nargis and Demos, this is kind of similar also to your origin story, because For Impact also started co-founded by our managing partners Ali and Pauline, and they decided to team up, but not because Pauline is a woman and Ali is an immigrant, but because of the complementary skills that they have, right? And this is, in many ways, we're a startup ourselves, because we started For Impact was started in 2019, and one of the most important things in startups is complementarity in the team. And so the reason that things have worked out so well for us is, again, because our skill sets just work very well together. And I think similarly, we haven't necessarily applied a gender lens or a diversity lens. We focused mostly, exclusively actually on the value that people add to an organization. And where has this brought us today? Again, we have the three partners. We have Ali, who's originally from Iran, Pauline, who is Dutch, Kate, who is South African, myself, German, Victor, who's Dutch, and we'll soon be joined by two women, one from Singapore, one from Sweden. So it's a very sort of diverse mix that we're cooking up here, and somehow we managed to achieve that without much, let's say, effort. And hopefully the message is, if we can, then so can other organizations. And I realize that it's probably more difficult for bigger and older organizations to do this, right? You'll have all the organizations that are in the Nasdaq that have been around for I don't know, dozens or hundreds of years. There's a culture that's really ingrained in the business that is difficult to sway away from. So this is where sort of the tech solutions come in, and to move business culture overall in the right direction, they're an important piece of the puzzle in making this happen. And I liked what Marina said earlier on this sort of, she gave this little nice formula, let's say, and I'm oversimplifying here, so excuse me, but genotype plus environment sort of shapes the phenotype, right? The genotype of people, there's not too much that we can do about that yet, but the environment is really what we can shape. Focus actually on a tech solution that helps reduce bias in hiring decisions. This is one of our investments, which is Equalture, and Equalture gamifies the recruitment process. So instead of uploading a CV, as an applicant, you're going to play a series of scientifically validated games on your phone or your computer, and that assesses the cognitive and the social profiles of people. And it's not about determining like good or bad, but it's seeing about where people fall on a spectrum and how that best fits in with the rest of the team, right? So we're back at the complementarity side of things, the yin and yang, which is what we're trying to build. And for organizations to use this is really a fantastic tool to reduce their own bias in the hiring decisions, right? Because whether we like it or not, bias is inherent to humans. That's my understanding of it, at least, and it's never truly going to go away. But so if we can use these cool tech solutions to help us sort of reduce our own weaknesses, our biases, that's the right step. That's a step in the right direction. So reducing hiring bias, that's one part of the story. But then once you onboard these people, you have to live inclusively, right? You have to build a culture that's welcoming to everyone. Not a sort of typical macho Wall Street type culture, but something that everyone can relate to, and where all skill sets can really, flourish. And there's a couple of very cool startups that we're seeing out there that are really targeting this slow cultural change in organizations. And I'm going to name three of them: Witty, Text.io, and Develop Diverse. Be curious to hear if anyone has heard of them. If so, I don't know, drop a message in the chat or something. Just curious if this is these are known solutions. But what these startups do is they're plugins that help you write in a more inclusive language. So just like Grammarly, it'll suggest language that is more inclusive when you write an email or a job posting or marketing materials. And Demos, you mentioned this earlier also. So again, great job on picking out these very cool statistics. The language that a job ad is written in, right, determines the applicants that are attracted to it and the people that thus apply to these jobs. And then using these plugins can help you sort of widen your candidate pool, right? Get more people interested in who you are as a company, and thus attract a more diverse audience. I'll give a specific example of the kind of improvements that you might see with a tool like Witty. So you're typing an email, right? Maybe me as an investor, I'll type a response to a startup after I've heard a pitch, and I'll write something like, "Hey guys, that was a strong presentation. What's your opinion on how you can achieve explosive growth?" Now, to some it may sound natural, but maybe to some it actually sounds a little off. And it's not actually a very nice way to phrase this. So Witty or Text.io or Develop Diverse, they'll suggest a better version. So listen to this. "Hey all, that was an intriguing presentation. What's your point of view on how you can realize consistent success?" Sounds a bit nicer, doesn't it? Right? And if you compare these individual terms, opinion versus point of view. Point of view is a little softer, and it's a bit more welcoming. And it's these little changes that stack up over time that really shape the culture of the culture of a company. So once you've onboarded a diverse set of people, once you've built an inclusive culture, the next step is also tracking and quantifying these changes, and also tracking team chemistry and welfare. And one of our latest investments is Quan, and Quan's mission is to realize employee welfare as part of a company's success, especially in the long term. So as an organization, if you want to improve, you need to measure stuff, right? And Quan quantifies the well-being of employees and on several different avenues. So they look at mind, body, meaning, self-fulfillment, social connectedness. And this ultimately creates a feedback culture that is very important, but also a culture that is respectful of people's individual needs and is mindful of areas of improvement, and overall just builds a better, more inclusive company. And so, yeah, on a more meta level, we're also seeing, since I mentioned people's individual needs and tracking that, there's also more and more startups in the market that we're seeing geared towards reducing inequalities in the workplace, or reducing differences in the way male and female employees are treated. So traditional workplace health options, especially with larger corporates, maybe they tend to be more favoring men, with the notable exception maybe being parental leave, but that's also changing. But there's a lot more startups also popping up in the female health space, sort of digital solutions that um, also aim at building a better company culture. So to wrap things up, I think there's a whole bunch of cool tech solutions out there that can help companies, build a more welcoming space, build a more diverse space. These are small changes, but again, over time, I think they're going to add up to something very interesting. And this is, this is all part of a transition that we're on. I'll
Yes.
leave it at that for now. Over to Charlotte or Helena.
Thank you. No, I think that is so interesting. And as you said, we're seeing great changes intergenerational, right? The people who are entering the workforce and maybe who are starting to be the entrepreneurs of tomorrow have a younger mindset, maybe a more equal mindset, but it still takes time to get the older ones to adapt. And also, I mean, there'll be just some change through time. Obviously, this generation will soon become the majority, somewhat soon.
Yeah.
But obviously, I would like to get Elena's point of view on this issue. Obviously, it was really interesting to learn about all these startups. What do you see, Elena, as somebody who's involved, as you said, in any form of investing possible, especially in Spain and in the European entrepreneurial ecosystem? What are changes that you're seeing? What do you think are changes we need to see also?
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, everyone. So let me explain you an history. I will try to be brief, but I started in this ecosystem in 2007 as a small business angel. And in 2009, I joined the startup as CEO. And I started to raise capital in 2009. I don't know if you remember, but we were all in crisis. No one wanted to invest anything. I came from the business side, so no clue of the tech ecosystem, no clue of the words that we use in the funding, the pre-money, tag a loan, these all words, drag a loan, what are you doing? No, I didn't know anything of that. So I started pitching, looking for funding in an all-men company. I was the only woman. But finally, 1 year later, we raised 1.5 million euros. And I have to tell you, I was pregnant of 6.5 months with 8 kilo more on weight, and no one noticed. No one. I tried to hide it, I accept, but I had 18 kilos more. So you can imagine all men, no one noticed. So that for me was like, okay, here we have a problem if they have not realized. And I have also hide it because I thought that was a problem. In fact, when I told them I was pregnant, that I didn't want to be a problem, and we will hire a new CEO. And so they told me to stay. We raised 1 million more in April, 1 month before my daughter was born, and 10 million more this same, 7 million more this same year from a UK fund. So when I left the startup in 2015-16, we had raised more than 30 million. But in this time, I realized that, I thought that we didn't have any problem because I was a woman, maybe because I was behaving like a man at that point. And I used to be at that point the only woman on the room. So I was, oh, you remember the pitch of the woman, huh? Because I was alone. I have to say that fortunately, 12 years later now, this doesn't happen anymore. Usually there is not only one woman pitching. We can find more, not 50% of the pitches, but quite a lot more. There are a lot of networks of women entrepreneurs. And I have to tell you also that in 2015, I founded another startup, but this time with a different goal. The first one was around cloud computing, so very techy. But the second one was about intimate health for women. So you can imagine when you are pitching to men about urine incontinence, sex pain, and all these kind of things, they will all looking like, okay, I don't want to look to your eyes when you are saying these words. And I realized we had a problem because, I mean, we need solutions for women. So we cannot have neutral startups only. We need also solutions for women. And when we are talking about health, usually it has been for men and women, but if you look until 10 years ago, for testing the pills and all these things, they only use men because they didn't want the hormone. I don't know how you say in English, but you understand, no? The hormone changes that we have the women. So women were not included in the studies. So we were forgetting quite a lot of that. So at that moment, I realized that I was going to pitch about problems in intimate health, and men didn't understand about the problem, didn't find any kind of empathy on what I was telling. And at the end, they were telling, oh, but you are targeting women, you're targeting a niche that it's half of the population of the world. And I was talking about something that all women at any point of their life would have. So that was the niche, just to put you on perspective. So at that moment, that was when I started to fight about we need more women entrepreneurs, we need more women founders, we need more women investors. Because at the end, it is likely that we invest as investors in something we feel reflect, we understand. So if there are more women investors, we will invest in more women, in more solutions for women, and all these kind of things. But the best of all is when you mix both teams. I was in the first startup, all men team and me. On the second, it was all women team and the CTO. So none of both were ideal. We really need the kind of mindset of that both of us bring. When I was listening to Marina, that she was saying we are not different, we have the same brain, I was saying, really? I cannot believe that. I mean, I think we are not the same. We should be equal, which is not that being the same. We are complementary. We have to bring our difference, and I think we behave differently, we take decisions differently. I'm not saying more conservative for women, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we our priorities are, or the things we put on the combination in order to take the decision, are just different. And when you have men and women, all they put different variables to take the decision, the outcome is better because you have more factors taken into account. So the diverse teams are better, but diverse teams, and as Ben was saying, it's not only about men and women. I mean, if both are men and women, a woman and a man, and both have studied on the same school, same university, same MBA, and same specialty in marketing, that's not diversity for me. They need to be diverse on how they think, and that's really when you bring value, that you bring value to women, you bring value to startups, you bring value to men, and you bring value to society. And one thing that surprised me is that I listened to this TEDx about the Columbia, I think it was Columbia study, where they said that they had analyzed 6,000 or I don't know how many pitches, and they were analyzing the questions that were given to men and they were given to women. I said, "Oh, come on, that cannot be true." So I started to look at myself, and I was doing the same. Even being sensitive to women, I had this bias, and I didn't ask the same questions to men and to women when they were pitching to me. So since that day, I'm forcing myself to always ask the same questions, to look with the same look to any project. And that's also why I created the group of women founders, the women investors, to invest on women founders. Even though I believe on diversity, I think that sometimes we need a push. And when we have normalized everything, you can bring again the diversity. But sometimes women, we need a push because we come from a man world in every aspect of our life. I mean, there are still countries that women cannot drive, or I think 70 years ago, we could not go to the bank alone and open a bank account alone. So we come from where we come. We have to know what is our past. Now we are pushing and rushing, and that's why we have to take some actions that are not about equality and that have some positive look to women, just to accelerate things so we can go to the diversity, because that's what we need. Have a lot of things to say, but I just don't want to be long. And just as an introduction, that's my point of view.
No, I think that's so interesting, Elena. Thank you for sharing. I think you're absolutely right. We need to give a little push, right? That's why we're having this conversation. We're having such events, and we're having initiatives such as yours of female networks to help each other out. And I also agree with what you said, that the best is diversity, and having exactly the same person and only gender being the difference will not cut it. We have so many variables in our identities, and everything should be taken into consideration as much as possible, to create a more diverse world and also better startups. We're slowly running out of time. I want to give the possibility to somebody to ask questions to our two amazing investors, because I think they give a new point of view that we haven't tackled as much yet. So if anybody has any question, please raise your hand or write it in the chat, or unmute yourself and go ahead, because this is your time before we wrap up and have to close the conversation. Walter, I see you have a question. Please go ahead. Oh, we cannot hear you, Walter. We cannot hear you, yeah. I think maybe you need to put some headphones or something. There must be.
Jesus.
There we go. There we go. We hear you now.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Okay, nice. This is not a question to the presenters. This is a question to you, because I thought when I read the agenda, and I mean, it's a massive complex that we talk about. We heard so many experiences and opinions and provocations, which I like. Then I thought from the outset, how are we going to manage this within 90 minutes? So I think this is just a starting point. My question is, are you planning, in terms of an exchange, of a discussion that's just starting, are you planning a part two?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Obviously, this is an event series, so there will be following up events. It is obvious. I wish we had 1 hour more or 2 hours more to keep discussing, because there's so many points we could go deeper on. You're absolutely right. With 1 hour and a half is not nearly enough time for such a big issue. So for sure there will be, and we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you, Walter, for asking. But yeah, we'll follow through. Anybody has any other questions directed to our speakers, or some last minute things they would like to ask?
If there are no questions, I would like to add one thing, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I wanted to mention, because after being like 14 years on this space with so many hats, I realized that funding startups or fundraising startups, at least on the early stages, is more a female thing. I know you Marina, said there is not such a female thing and a man thing. We are all equal, but I think there is a female thing because there are female traits. I don't know who said that. It was you, Marina, or someone said about the female traits and male traits, but we tend to be more intuitive, more about the global aspect, moralistics, and men tend to be more rational, numbers, and so when you are starting a startup, you are pursuing a dream, and when you are pursuing a dream and you are fundraising, you are selling a vision. You are not selling numbers. You are not selling rational. So at that moment, it's more a female trait, and we are imitating the male traits to get the funding, when in reality what we are trying to get as founders is empathy, that people can trust us, and we are very good as women doing that. So why don't we use our skills, and men also use the female trait skills to do the fundraising, because at the end the decision will be taken by a person at what he thinks. I really think this founder is likely to make it happen, because you can put whatever you want on a spreadsheet. I mean, you can show a lot of figures, but if you don't have anything on the early stages or just 1 year of life, I mean, there's not so rational. If you have 10 million revenues, okay, we can talk about spreadsheets, balance sheet, and P&L and L, and so. But when you don't have this, then you have 1 year, 1 year and a half, even two. It's a person decision. It's a mind decision. It's a hard decision, and that's more related to females. So I think we have a huge opportunity here for women to increase both aspects, more women funding, more women getting funded, if we really understand what is the fundraising thing about. That's it.
Right. Thank you for adding that, Elena. I think it closes well the chapter on the fact that, as Marina said, and from what I understood from her presentation, we might not have inborn differences, but society gave us some differences. And as you said, Elena, women tend to be very good communicators, good at connecting with others, and taking what was maybe pushed on us and was on the other hand pushed on men as expectations, as a trait, and turning them in strength absolutely will be the only way we can then slowly achieve equality, because we'll achieve success first. So I think that is exactly a good point, and referring it to funding, absolutely, as you said, it's people taking decisions, and we are people. So let's find a way to connect. Let's find a way to use these strengths that were given to us somehow. And on the other hand, it's an invite to men to tap into their, I hate to call it the feminine energy, because again, it's all silly words that we use to describe traits that should be for everybody, but to use it as an advantage too, because it might get them further as well, and maybe get us to a more even playing field. I see Natalia, do you want to add something before we close up?
Yeah, so actually, I wanted to say something because what Elena was talking about reminded me of something that happened in one of my courses I'm taking. So, as a university student, I do international business and I take a leadership course. And one of the questions that our professor asked us during our first class was whether we think women or men are better leaders. And so, all of the guys raised their hand to say men. And so it just reminded me of that. And I do completely agree with the fact that we have different traits, and maybe women tend to be better at some things and men at others. But I do worry about the harmful effect of generalizing the traits on female and males, because to say that maybe a woman is better at communicating might be sending out the message that most men are not. And for example, in my class, when the teacher actually told the class that it was women that are better leaders, I saw a lot of men boys get discouraged by this. So I think it's important to point out the differences, but at the same time, remind everyone that traits can be developed. You can become a good communicator, you can become a good empath regardless of gender. Um, and yeah, I think diversity is very important. Um, and yeah, I don't know. That's just what I wanted to add to the conversation, maybe to get.
Natalia, can I make a comment? I
Of
think
course.
the problem is using the word better for comparing men to and women. It's not about
Yes,
being
exactly.
better. It's about
Yeah.
being different and complementary, and some skills more developed than others in some people. So I think the word better, it makes a lot of harm to the discussion, because it's not, we are not trying to raise a better race in the world. We want to have something where both of us have the same opportunities, where both of us can live well. So it's not about being better or taking your seat or so. It's living together and doing things exponentially better, but together. not
Yeah, no,
separate. So I
thank
think
you,
that's
Elena. That's
important.
exactly what I wanted to say.
Perfect. Well, thank you to both. This was a great way to end the discussion and to complete the circle of thoughts. I want to then thank everybody for coming, thank all the speakers for bringing such valuable insight, because I've learned a lot. I hope everybody has, but I get the feeling that was the case from the exchanges we had. I want to invite one last time whoever is not, most people who are still here are members of Entnest, but if you're not, please do join. There's the link in the chat. And if you can leave a testimonial, if you enjoyed this event or you have any feedback, also if you wanted anything to be improved, please send us a message, whether in the chat right now or even via LinkedIn to me or to whoever you're connected to and would like to refer this feedback to from our team. And thank you again, everybody. It was a valuable moment, and I hope it was for you as well. And I wish everybody a good rest of the week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great week.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Bye.
again,
Thank you.
Charlotte, and everybody else. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.